Picture this, a full-scale war that's over in less than 40 minutes. I know, it sounds completely impossible, right? But it actually happened. And today, we're going to break down one of the most bizarre, just straight-up astonishing events in all of military history. The story of the 38-minute war.
Yeah, you heard that right. 38 minutes. That is literally how long it lasted. I mean, that's less time than it takes to watch an episode of your favorite show, probably less time than your morning commute. It is officially the shortest war in recorded history, period.
So, I mean, it just begs the question, right? How on earth could a declared war be over and done with in less time than a TV show? Well, to answer that, we've got to jump in the time machine and head back to the late 19th century.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is the Anglo-Zanzibar War, which all went down on August 27, 1896. And the two sides couldn't be more different. In one corner, you've got the mighty British Empire, and in the other, the small island Sultanate of Zanzibar, right off the coast of what we now call Tanzania.
But look, to really get how this whole conflict could be so unbelievably short, we first have to understand why this one little island was so incredibly important back then. Location, as they say, is everything.
Yeah, Zanzibar wasn't just some random spot on the map. It was a huge geopolitical prize. I mean, think about it. It was this strategic hub in the Indian Ocean, a crossroads for all these lucrative trade routes between India and Europe. For Britain, if you controlled Zanzibar, you controlled the shipping lands. But there was another big piece to this puzzle. Zanzibar was a major center of the East African slave trade, and Britain, for a mix of humanitarian and, let's be honest, imperial reasons, was dead set on shutting it down. All of this made the island a key piece on the chessboard in that great imperial scramble for Africa.
So Britain's grip on the island didn't just happen overnight. It grew steadily over a couple of decades. First they pressure the Sultan to abolish the slave trade in 73. Then, in 1890, they make this big deal with Germany, the Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty, which basically hands control of Zanzibar to the British. And that very same year, boom, it's officially a British protectorate. So here's the crucial takeaway, the most important part. Even though the Sultan was still the guy on the throne, the face of the place, Britain now held all the real power, and that included a veto over who could be the next Sultan.
And that brings us to this spark that lit the whole powder keg. On August 25, 1896, the pro-British Sultan, a guy named Hamad bin Twaini, dies. And when I say he died suddenly, I mean really suddenly.
This move right here created what's known as a casus belli. That's just a fancy term for an act that justifies going to war. See, it was widely believed that Sultan Hamad didn't just die, he was poisoned. And the main suspect? His own cousin, Khalid bin Bargash. And Khalid didn't even wait for the body to get cold. He just stormed the palace, declared himself the new sultan, and completely ignored the treaty that said he needed British approval. Well, you can imagine the British were, let's just say, not having it. At all. Their guy, their preferred candidate, was Hamoud bin Mohammed, someone they saw as, easy to work with and friendly to their goals. Khalid, on the other hand, he was seen as pro-German, and that made him a direct threat to British dominance in the whole region. So, in their eyes, he simply had to go.
Now, what's really wild is when you look at the balance of power here, or I should say, the imbalance, it was absolutely staggering. So Khalid, he manages to pull together about 2,800 men, and this is a mix of palace guards, civilians, even servants, and he fortifies the palace with whatever old cannons and guns he can find. But then you look out into the harbor. The British have 5 modern warships, including 2 heavy-duty cruisers, manned by Royal Marines and backed up by 900 loyal local Zanzibari soldiers they called askari. Against all that firepower, Khalid's single little royal yacht, the HHS Glasgow, well, it didn't stand a chance.
So what you get next is this incredibly tense 2-day standoff. You've got the British warships just sitting there, menacingly in the harbor, all their huge guns pointed directly at the palace. Meanwhile, the top British diplomat on the island, a guy named Basil Cave, is trying to talk some sense into the new self-declared sultan.
But here's the thing. Cave couldn't just give the order to fire. He needed the official green light from back home in London. So he sends this urgent telegram to the Foreign Office, and it basically says, look, if talking doesn't work, are we authorized to, fire on the palace from the warships? You can just feel the tension in that message, can't you?
And the reply from London came back, and it was fast, and it was clear. It essentially said, you have our permission to do whatever you think is necessary. And just to add an exclamation point to that message, Rear Admiral Harry Rawson shows up on his flagship, the HMS St. George. The final ultimatum was delivered, and it was simple.
Sultan Khalid, you have to take down your flag and be out of that palace by 9 a.m. tomorrow, August 27th, or we will open fire.
You'd think that would be enough, right? But Khalid, he just completely misread the room. About an hour before the deadline, he sends his reply, and it's just shockingly defiant. He basically says, "We're not taking our flag down, and we don't think you have the guts to open fire on us." Wow. That was a fatal miscalculation.
So Basil Cave sends one last message back, and it is a masterclass in that sort of chilling, polite, 19th century British firmness. It said, "We do not want to open fire, but unless you do as you are told, we shall certainly do so." I mean, there's no misunderstanding that, is there? The line had been drawn in the sand.
And so, the clock ticked past 9 a.m. The ultimatum had expired, and the world was about to witness its very, very shortest war.
At exactly 2 minutes past 9, the Royal Navy warships just unleashed hell. High explosive shells started ripping through the palace's wooden walls. Just 3 minutes into the bombardment, the Sultan's little yacht, the HHS Glasgow, bravely fires on the mighty HMS St. George. It was answered with a massive volley and was sunk in the harbor almost instantly. And by 9:40 a.m., it was all over. The palace was just a burning wreck, its cannons were silent, and the Sultan's flag had been shot right off its pole. The shelling stopped. Oh, and Khalid? Reports say he bailed at the very first shot, leaving all his followers behind.
And the aftermath, I mean, it just shows you how brutally one-sided this whole thing was. About 500 of Khalid's people were killed or wounded. And on the British side, one sailor got a minor injury. That's it. One. It was just this terrifying demonstration of what modern industrial warfare could do.
So, what was the price for those 38 minutes of defiance? Well, the aftermath was every bit as fast and decisive as the war itself.
Okay, so here's what happened next. First, Sultan Khalid and his inner circle ran for it, getting asylum in the German consulate. The British, without missing a beat, installed their guy, Hamoud bin Mohammed, as the new sultan, just with way less power. Then, to make sure everything stayed calm, they bring in 150 Sikh troops from the mainland. And then, the final insult. Khalid's supporters were forced to pay 300,000 rupees in reparations. Basically, they had to pay for the cost of the bombs and shells that had just been fired at them.
The long-term consequences here were huge, and this is really why this little war matters. It effectively ended Zanzibar's independence. It became a puppet state, totally under British control, all the way until 1963. Now, on the plus side, the new Sultan, with a lot of encouragement from the British, did abolish slavery for good. But on a bigger scale, this 38-minute war served as a brutal, unmistakable message to any other local rulers who were thinking about resisting European power during the scramble for Africa.
So, it leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Was the 38-minute war just a weird historical footnote? You know, a great story for a trivia night? Or was it something more? A chillingly clear and brutal lesson in the cold, efficient mechanics of imperial power? Hey, if you enjoyed digging into this pretty unusual story, you'll probably love the other videos we have in our Unusual History Events playlist, so definitely check that out. And for more explainers like this one, do us a favor and subscribe to Notebook Summaries. Thanks for hanging out with us.